Good afternoon, everyone, and the warmest of welcomes to what I think is the second of our SUI inaugurals lecture series. And the aim of the lecture series is to both recognise and to celebrate our recently appointed professors in the university. And it's an absolute pleasure of mine to introduce my colleague and also my friend, Professor Christine Rivers, who is going to be doing our inaugural lecture this afternoon, entitled Studying and Teaching with Body and Mind. My name is Andy Adcroft. I'm the Deputy Dean of the Business School, but probably more importantly for today, I'm also the co-director of the Centre for Management Education located here in the Business School, along with Christine Rivers. We launched the centre a few years ago, and Christine's leadership in the centre has been absolutely instrumental in its growth, in its development, both in terms of the breadth of activities that we do in the Centre for Management Education, but also in terms of the depth of activities that we do in the Centre for Management Education. And I'm incredibly proud to be the host and to welcome Christine to do her inaugural lecture. As we go through the lecture, if you have any questions at any time, then please use the Q&A chat thing here in Zoom, and once Christine has finished the lecture, then we'll go into the Q&A and we'll answer as many questions as we possibly can. Also, just to let everyone know, we're recording the session today, so it's going to be available for people who can't make it to the session itself, who can look at it on the dedicated inaugurals website as on-demand content. So before I ask Christine to do her inaugural lecture, I'm going to just embarrass her for a couple of minutes by talking about her achievements and what she's done. Christine is our absolutely newly minted Professor of Management Education here in the university, in the Business School and the Centre for Management Education, but also is one of very few National Teaching Fellows as well. I think we have around about half a dozen across the university, and Christine is one of our most recent ones. And as I mentioned, she's the co-director and co-founder of the Centre for Management Education. She's the director of learning and teaching for the Business School. And I think Christine's an accredited executive coach. She's a certified yoga and meditation teacher, but also internationally has a growing reputation, not only as a scholar in management education, but also as a consultant in management education. A whole bunch of universities around the world, things are happening both in terms of staff development and also in terms of student experience because of the work that Christine has done. So she is a hugely influential scholar, a hugely influential consultant, and it's been great over the last few years to work with her. Over the last couple of years, Christine has been absolutely instrumental in the work that not only we've done in the Business School around delivery of online and hybrid education during the pandemic and our active digital design, but also instrumental in terms of the university and the sector as a whole. It's no exaggeration to say that we wouldn't be in the great place that we are as a university and a business school in terms of how we deliver our programs if it wasn't for the work of Christine. Christine is also hugely influential and engaged in a whole bunch of bodies, from Chartered Association of Business Schools here in the UK, the British Academy of Management in the UK, the Academy of Management in the United States, the Management Organisation Behaviour Teaching Society in the United States, as well as being plugged in really well to journals like the Journal of Management Education, Academy of Management Learning and Education, and so on. So I think that is absolutely enough from me. I'm now going to hand over to Professor Christine Rivers, and it sounds great every time I say that. It brings a smile to my face. Professor Christine Rivers, please give us your inaugural lecture. Christine.
Thank you so much, Andy. I'm really, really delighted, and I didn't know what a what a great resume I have. It's always nice when somebody plays it back, right? So welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining here today, or maybe remotely at a later point. So one of my big passions is really around a pedagogy of care, and in addition to some of the other stuff that people know me maybe about, which is active digital design, Andy has talked about. But today I would really like to dedicate this session here for this passion that I have, and that is to think about how we can support our students to study and also our colleagues to teach, not just with the mind, but with the body. So let's get started. And in this fashion, I would like to invite you to just take a deep breath in, maybe push a little bit away from your desk where you're at, and then just put your hands onto your knees, because this is about body and mind. So I would like you to take a moment here, take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And then just gently close your eyes for one moment. Let's land in this space together, not just physically, but also mentally. And ask yourself, what is your state of being? Maybe there is a sensation coming up, a feeling or a thought. Our state of being affects the way how we study as students, but also how we are perceived as teachers. And then just use the chat function when you're ready to just write down that one word that maybe came up for you while you try to connect with yourself and check in with yourself. Okay, I'll let you ponder over that for a little while, and we will come back to those hopefully later on. So one of the questions that we're asking ourselves is probably, why this topic now, and what is happening to us that we need to talk about it? In some way, what I've found, whether it is through the pandemic, but even before, there seems to be that mental health of students and staff is widely affected by the way of how we live our lives. And that results in a lot of increased stress, anxiety, exhaustion. And this is an occurring theme in a lot of learning and teaching conferences, journals, and so forth. And one of the reasons might be because we have lost this connection between our body and mind, because we are overwhelmed and we haven't yet developed a toolbox to help ourselves with. So stress and anxiety are the two main aspects that I'm going to focus on for now. And let's start with the students. Where's the stress and anxiety anchored? So quite often that is because there is pressure to perform. We also find that a lot of students have neurodiversity needs, but don't know how to address them, don't know how to go about them. Maybe they weren't diagnosed with any of that, and they only come to the forefront when they are at university. Of course, uncertainty pre, during, and post-COVID is still an factor that comes into play as well. Whether somebody has COVID, whether a family member has COVID, whether it is about what happens next. And then with the whole move to online, of course, new assessment formats really stressed students. Online exams, submissions required them to be differently equipped with answering questions, moving about, navigating the online landscape. And we also know that that led to increased stress and anxiety. What happened, therefore? We had an absolute influx of extenuating circumstances, as well as increased academic integrity cases. So where we found students either plagiarize or cheating and those sort of things, even though everyone knows that that's not a responsible behavior. But what we also see across the sector, and this is very alarming, is a reduced level of engagement of our students and an increased level of referrals to well-being services and occupational health. So from an academic perspective, what are the stress and anxiety for us as teachers? Obviously, there are external and internal triggers that we can look at. External would be, of course, the whole environment, COVID, homeschooling was one of them, but also dealing maybe with our day-to-day on top of that. With everything else, we had an increased workload, we had reduced resources, more and more admin is expected of us as well. And so staff morale reduces as well. So therefore, we can see that there is more sick leave. There is also unexpected behaviors where people maybe become less patient, whether it is with students or with colleagues. But also there is reduced engagement from our colleagues across the schools and the faculty maybe in taking part, participating in certain sessions. Making mistakes is also one of those outcomes. As I mentioned earlier, an increased referral to occupational health, and then obviously resignations. So this is all really sad in a way. And like I said in the very beginning, one of the reasons why we see this is because we maybe haven't equipped ourselves with the toolbox to deal with this. What we often hear when we speak to students is when they're referred to wellbeing centers, while they're absolutely providing a superb service, is that they feel that they are not addressing their issue per se in the same sort of way, or they feel they don't want to be labeled. I'll come into that a little bit more later on. And so the question is there another way? The good news is there is, and this is where I think the body and mind connection certainly comes into play, and particularly yoga and meditation. But before I'm going to share with you findings of our own study, I would like to draw on a little bit of evidence that has shown the impact of yoga and meditation on student performance and staff well-being. So we know that regular practice, and where regular practice, people normally speak about 20 minutes over 21 days, reduces anxiety and stress. And Prashad wrote in 2004, the state of the mind and that of the body are intimately related. If the mind is relaxed, the muscles in the body will also be relaxed. Stress produces a state of physical and mental tension. And of course, this stress that produces that physical and mental tension is not something that is sustainable over a longer period of time. So we do know from various studies that were conducted a while ago, and there are more recent ones as well, but these are some that are quite influential, is that this sort of regular mindfulness practice, if we use mindfulness as an umbrella term for meditation and yoga, can reduce the heart rate. And it can also alter the brain waves. And that is actually really important because it can allow us to slow down, and it can allow us to control our emotions in a very different way. Continuing with the evidence and the regular practice of 20 minutes, for instance, over 21 days, as I mentioned, it regulates emotions because we connect with the body and the mind. Cohen said, such activities promote the kinesthetic, somatic, and cognitive integration that most accurately reflects the way our brains operate. Coordinate inhaling and exhaling while moving simultaneously, attending the breath, balance, and alignment. I harness my energy for a single purpose. And so it is really about how can we use our breath, for instance, to control our emotions and therefore lower our stress levels. There is a bit of evidence around how yoga and meditation increases short-term academic performance, and also particularly for students with learning difficulties. So you can see here that the studies are reaching from the beginning of 2000s all the way to the last 2 or 3 years. And I think that is really promising because it shows a sustained positive impact. And most importantly, it calms the nervous system. So The other evidence that I would like to bring into here is the impact that yoga can have on the emotional intelligence, and particularly for managers. And I think this is a really important aspect. The United Nations has an agenda to drive not just the sustainability goals, but also came up with something called the inner development goals. And if you look at those inner development goals, which are listed here, 1 to 5, the first one is around the being, that relationship to ourselves. If we look at those 5, the thinking, the cognitive skills is what we do really well in higher education. But and we're probably also quite good at the collaboration, social skills. In the business school, for instance, we have quite a lot of group work. But the being, that relationship to ourselves, we don't really bring that in, and we don't necessarily allow that. So this is about self-awareness, self-regulation, self-motivation, and so on. So that is a really important skill for our students, but also for us as educators. And how often do we take time out to really look into that relationship with ourselves, actually? But it's also about how we relate to others and how we relate to the world and what our position within that is. So the inner development goals that are set by the United Nations and driven by the principles for responsible management education, I think play a really important role in this and driving this forwards. And for me, evidence enough that this connection of body and mind is more important than ever before. But you might ask, well, isn't yoga meditation as a pedagogy something that is very new agey? Well, actually it is not. John Dewey in 1898 urged pedagogues to make experience central to education. And he argued that thought and action, or theory and practice, could be separated, thus challenging the prevailing belief that theorizing was the superior endeavor. He actually envisioned the university as a bridge between the mind and the material world. And one of his articles, he really talks about this body-mind connection. And so I think sometimes it's really interesting to see that these thoughts and ideas were there before, and for me raises the question of why haven't they been taken on board more? Why are we still just trying to explain everything with our rational mind and teach in that sort of same way? Another person that is quite influential in this space is Antonio Damasio, and in 1999 said that body-minded minds help save the body. So he argues that consciousness originates in the pre-linguistic core self that maintains survival by taking its cues from the body, the brain, as the body's captive audience. What that for me means that when we are about to go and teach, for instance, sometimes we go into a classroom and we see students, you know, fidgeting around, or you can also see it in any classroom really, or ourselves as well. People want to move. We don't want to be locked in and stay still all the time, but we do this for a prolonged period of time. So this is really where I think, you know, we need to think a little bit more about what does this mean to us and how do we design our sessions to enable this connection taking place. And Cohen continues to quote Antonio by saying, without mental images drawn from these physical experiences, survival in human consciousness would be impossible. For we would be unable to connect the biological machinery of life regulation and the biological machinery of thought. And I think it's that connection that we talk about, that sort of, you know, thought and physical element. So that brings me to our own study that we did. And there's a little bit of background here. So in the summer 2021, I decided to offer to the university as part of their Wellbeing Week some meditation sessions. Just to see, you know, how students might find that. And the uptake was very small at the time. We didn't do quite a lot of marketing either. But when it came to January, I had a couple of emails from students asking if we will continue maybe with that meditation in semester 2. Now, I recently qualified there as a yoga teacher as well, and I suggested to Osama Khan, Professor Osama Khan at the time, and the faculty that it might be helpful to have a set yoga and meditation session on a Wednesday afternoon for students to join in. Originally, this was only for business circle students, but then I've been asked to do this sort of more widely. And that was really interesting. So I started scheduling those, and every week we focused on a different topic. Now, Andy mentioned that I'm Director for Learning and Teaching as well, and this allowed me to really tailor these 12 sessions throughout the 12 weeks of the semester towards those needs. So, for instance, in week 2, I think, so week 1 was about connecting with oneself. Week 2 was around choice. Now, in week 2, our students have to make their choices for their optional modules. And so making that choice, or sometimes they have to make choices around which group to join for a group assessment. So we can speak to these things and really sort of support students on their journey. So this week is Calibrate, and we will hold a session later on today. So every week, another topic that was tailored towards the academic weeks. We have over 160 students signing up for this, 125 across the Faculty of Social Sciences, 14 from FHMS and 17 from FEPS. And these break into 11 doctoral students, 94, although it's more now, it's over 100 PGT students and 51 undergraduate students. Interestingly, the level of experience is that 96 of those are new to yoga and meditation, 46 indicated they have some experience, and 14 said that they do regular practice. What was really interesting is I only asked 3 questions, and I only asked those questions because that's what you learn as a yoga teacher. You need to make sure that you understand people's needs and particularly any physical injuries. So I asked them about the experience level. I asked them if they have any physical injuries, and my third question was their reason for joining. So I didn't give any indication of what that would be. They just wrote down in open comments what that might be. 1/3 of those who have signed up, so over 160, said that their physical reasons why they would like to join the yoga or meditation class. 2/3 indicated study-related and mental health reasons. Now, in these 2/3, there's 3 top themes: stress, anxiety, and concentration were indicated as the issues that they face and why they would like to do yoga and meditation. And their goal was to get more focus, to have more clarity, and to be able to relax. Now, this was really exciting for me in a way, because I didn't expect originally when I sent this out that I would get such rich data back to really understand that. It was really interesting to see that those that were new to yoga meditation mostly indicated study-related and mental health reasons. And they wrote the longest explanations as well. Whereas those who had some experience or were regular, their focus was more on physical reasons, but they didn't indicate any sort of mental health reasons. And I think that is really telling from the data that we have collected here. So as I said, it says here 150 signups, but it increases every week a little bit. We have an average of around 30 students per week in the yoga class. And then it depends, sometimes similar between 20 and 30 in the meditation class. Some students come every week. Some students are, new and join in. And there's also a difference between those joining the yoga and the meditation. Some just join the yoga, some just join the meditation class, actually. But the student feedback has been absolutely overwhelming. Whether this was in chats after the session or whether it was sent to me via email. This is exactly what I need. I feel so peaceful. Student Lucy said, I need this so much, I'm so less stressed. Or Ahmed says, thank you so much, I feel less anxious. And just reading those really gives me the confidence that this helps students and can allow them to develop this toolbox that I was talking about earlier, and also bring that into the classroom for themselves. But what also happened is that I was then approached by the Veterinary Society at Surrey, and they were asking whether I would be interested in putting on a retreat for them in one evening as part of their well-being week. And so I said yes. That was in the first week of March. And this was a 2-hour bespoke retreat, focusing on meditation, yoga, and some coaching. And the theme that they wanted me to focus on was I'm good enough. There were over 30 signups and 26 attended. And Claire provided this really lovely quote. She said, I love being able to detach from everything for 2 hours, especially after I received my marks. So this was the Thursday after the Wednesday when they received their marks, and not everything went well for them. In particular, the student didn't get the marks that they wanted. And so we had, this whole topic around I'm good enough seems to have really resonated with them, and it was wonderful to work with them. So I've got a little snapshot on the left here that we shared on Instagram from some of the students that have stayed after to have a conversation. And yeah, it was really, really insightful for me. And also some of them were new to this whole idea, but they were open to it. So I would like to now take this opportunity to invite you to join me to practice some of those steps, some of those tools that I develop and that I work with the students. So if you just want to find a comfortable place, sit maybe on the floor, but you can also sit on your chair. That's not a problem at all. There's 5 steps to get started. You can practice those anytime. You can integrate those into your day-to-day study or in a teaching practice. And like I said, you can join the standing up or sitting down. So the first one is to connect. The first step is to connect with ourselves and to really look into this relationship for ourselves. So take a deep breath in and then just take your hands to your heart center. And with your next breath out, slowly close your eyes. Take a moment to become aware of your breath, aware of the present moment. We often seem to live more in the past or dwell on what didn't go so well, and also more in the future, focusing on the things that we haven't accomplished yet, the paper that hasn't been published, or the session that we still have to teach. And that means that we are not connected to ourselves in the present moment in a way that allows us to be here, find ease, and really be there for our own emotions and our own sensations. And as you are connecting with yourself, observe your breath going in through your nose and touching the back of your throat. Observe your belly going in and out. And then the first tool that I share with students and also colleagues is to start to breathe in for a count of 5. Breathe in for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And breathe out for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. You can repeat that as many times as you need to, just observing the breath. As I mentioned in the beginning, we often spend more time in the past or in the future, but what lies behind us and what lies in front of us is nothing compared to what lies within us. Take a deep breath in And out. The second step is to choose. And a really nice way to choose is here to use our body to twist to the left and to the right. So one way could be, if you're sitting down, is just to breathe in, lift your hands up and create space between your spine, between your vertebrae. And then breathe out and come into cactus arms. That might be one way. Or you can take one hand, the right hand down to your left knee, and then just twist to the left side, breathing out. And then breathe in, come back to center. Change your hands around, take your left hand down to your right knee. And breathe out, twist to the right. Breathe in, come back to center. And breathe out, twist to the left. And as you are twisting from left to right, anchored and connected with your breath, I often share a number of mantras with students and colleagues to really allow this connection, this choice to strengthen, to deepen. And the first one would be, I choose to be present. Quite often we are about to give a lecture or run into a meeting, and we might be physically present, but we're certainly not mentally present. So making that choice actively and consciously to be present and to saying it out loud can really help us to anchor, to let go of what was and focus on what is. Equally, one of the mantras I share with the students is, I focus on my studies. Making that choice to dedicate the time and to focus increases their concentration. And the third one would be, I engage with my students. Do we choose to really engage fully and actively with our students? Or do we have an assumption that our students are expected to engage with us when we enter the classroom? So maybe in the future you can just try a couple of them out. Maybe you have your own mantras that are helpful and that you want to choose to anchor yourself in the present moment and then make a conscious choice. Step 3 is on create. And I quite like to use the steeple grip. So you take your hands together like a little gun if you want. Lengthen out, stretch out your index fingers and your thumbs. And then you just stretch up and lean from one side to the other. Breathe in, come back to center, and then breathe out. And just bend to the other side. And what happens is you create space on the right side of your body and the left side of your body. And you deepen your breath. And creation is the combination of attention and intention. So when we create something, whatever that might be, we create a lecture, we create an environment for learning, or we create a new study space for ourselves, we focus our attention. But then we also need to set an intention for the time. Like that you will be with your students, that you will be present with your students. Or if you study, that you take time to study and prepare. It's very easy sometimes to just say, well, you need to do this and you need to do that. But if you haven't got that relationship with yourself and you focus your attention and set a clear intention, then creation is not going to flow or take place in the same sort of way. So step 1 was connect. Step 2 was to choose and make choices. And step 3 is to create. And that is all wonderful. But what is important is that we can also cultivate that. So step 4 is to cultivate. And I often like to use eagle arms to do that. So if you breathe in and take your arms wide into a T shape, and then bring your left arm underneath your right arm and interlace your hands. It could be that the palms of your hands come together. It could be the back of the hands, or you just hug yourself. There are different variations of how you can do that. And then wherever you are, whether you have your hands just hugging yourself or intertwined, take a deep breath in. Bring your elbows slightly up. So you lengthen again through the spine and then breathe out. And cultivation is around reflection for yourself, reflection of how you feel, how you maybe have facilitated a certain session, or maybe how your studies turned out. And at the same time, to be grateful and to be committed to continue that. So I don't think that we do take a lot of time for cultivating what we have learned or where we are at. And so this is a really important step for us as educators, but also for students to take that time. And when you have finished, you can then take your hands and put your right arm underneath your left arm, so you change sides. So you're balanced out. And as you are in this pose with your eagle arms, focus on one point in front of you. We call this the drishti in yoga, so that you can really dive into that reflection and gratitude and connection with yourself. And finally, when we cultivate, what is also important is that we celebrate. I think we often think we celebrate when we have achievements, like I'm here giving this an oral lecture, or I'm doing an NTF, I get an NTF award or something like that. But do we actually celebrate our small achievements as well? So it could be that maybe we went into a classroom and what we wanted to achieve was that the students are present, that the students are engaged, that they're asking lots of questions. Do we ever get out of the class and go, yes, that's exactly what I wanted it to be? Did you think about what you wanted to be, and did it turn out? Did you try to, we call it, manifest it or not? So I think celebration is undervalued. Well, I think we need to make more of celebration and have our own little celebrations. So quite often what I like to do is just to spread my arms and spark my hands and fingers. And that is just for me a sign to celebrate my own little achievements that I have set myself. You can celebrate your tenacity, your focus, or you can just celebrate just being you. And I think that is good enough as well. Okay, so this concludes my lecture and my presentation. And I thank you very much for being here. And I'm very happy to take any questions. And before I do that, I'm going to go and look at the chat for a minute to just look through some of the words. So we have excited, busy, calm, multitasking, racing. Yeah, so exactly, you know, your state of being is racing around, maybe from one meeting to another meeting, wanting to be there and there. So how does that serve you? And hopefully I've provided you with a little bit of a toolbox to reduce that racing. Fine. We all like the word fine. What does that really mean? Being conscious and mindful of personal awareness, we'll have an idea of our strengths and weaknesses and get a better feel for how others perceive us and how we engage socially. Yes, that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Renee. Okay, that's everything. And I've got the list of references as well, of course, but I'll just bring them up very shortly. Oh no, that didn't work. Never mind. Over to you, Andy.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you, Chrissy. I actually feel a whole lot better having gone through quite a lot of that. That was really good. That was really interesting. So everyone, if you have any questions for Chrissy, please do post them in the Q&A here in the Zoom. I've got the Q&A open so I can pick them up as they come in. Just to kind of get the ball rolling. It's a general question about something that you may have had to deal with, Christine, as you work through these issues and these kind of, I guess I call them interventional. I'm not sure that's the right kind of word. I'm conscious, as most people who work in universities are, that well-being is an issue that's coming to the top of our agendas. We see it with colleagues, we see it with students. Your approach, the body and mind approach, is a little bit novel. I think it's fair to say it's not something that you would often see. So I guess my question first of all is have you come across skepticism about this? You know, universities are not always the most willing organisations to embrace innovation and to embrace change. So have you come across skepticism around your work, and how have you dealt with it? How have you overcome it?
That's a really good question, and I'd love to answer that one. So, of course, it is a little bit different, an alternative, if you want, but as I showed, it's not that new. But what I'm really grateful for is that I have a very supportive team behind me. And this is not just in a business school, but across the university. Professor Osama Khan, I mentioned earlier, our Provost Chancellor for Education, is a big fan of that as well. And so we have a lot of buy-in, but also the student union. So I work a lot with the student union on this. They're very supportive of these approaches too. I think pedagogy of care is probably the concept that stands behind that to some degree as well, and that becomes or has received more traction over the time. So I think in terms of implementing it, and even when I shared it in other universities and other business schools, the responses were very positive. And I'm in conversations with a number of other business schools who would like to work with me to deliver a similar offering to their students in the next academic year, because I do think that we are all facing the same issues around well-being and engagement and all those sorts of things. In terms of skepticism, absolutely, there is skepticism all over the place, and it's about allowing people space. It's not everybody's cup of tea, and that's absolutely fine, okay? And I think there is a lot of work that we need to be doing around clarifying some of the words. You know, meditation, yoga, they're not religions, and they're just different ways of dealing with our inner world and understanding it differently. And so I think it is really important that we consider that, but being open and, you know, still inviting people, keeping going. And sometimes people are skeptical about things because they don't know it. It's unknown to them, it's unfamiliar, and so there is a little bit of, you know, feeling afraid or fear or whatever that might be. And so it might take a little while for them to come around to trying it out and seeing how it goes. And if it's not for them, it's not for them.
Brilliant, thanks, Chrissy. So we've had our first question. We've got a couple of questions that have come in. So one of them, I'll just read the question out so that everyone can see it. So thank you, fascinating stuff. I think we'd all agree there. I'd never come across the United Nations IDGs. Do you have any examples of ways that you or other universities have embedded them in their learning and teaching? And that's a similar kind of question to one that we've had in the chat as well, which is how has mindfulness changed your own teaching? So maybe could you
yes, okay,
those questions at the same time?
Yes, sure, of course, I'd love to. So in the development goals, they're brand new. So they have just come out very recently. So I think a lot of universities are just looking into that, especially those that are supporting the PRME, so that's the Principles of Responsible Management Education. But I think they have a wider application, and so yeah, we will see more of that. Funny enough, or interestingly enough, we are currently going for our curriculum design review, and we are building a lot of that into it. So a personal professional development and the development goals will feature in that more and more and more. But also, I think they're also integrated and part of the pillars of the curriculum framework that the university suggests as well around resourcefulness and resilience, which also feeds into that. So I think there is more to come. I think we just need to become more aware of it and then really integrate it and make it explicit. I think a lot of the work is happening behind the scenes, but we're not explicit about it. And now we're realizing that maybe we need to be more explicit. So that's the first one. The second one is how this mindfulness approach has changed my own teaching. Absolutely. I love teaching, and I love bringing these sort of things into my teaching as well. I share it with colleagues, obviously, and then with students as well. And for me, it has allowed me to give myself permission and the students permission to let go and to become present. And so if I rush from one meeting to another, to say, okay, I need a moment to become present here. What about you? Shall we all join in and just take a moment to close our eyes and feel into where we're at? And what happens is the majority of people just join in. And afterwards they come and say, I really didn't know how stressed I was. It really helped me to just focus. And it doesn't take long. It can take 2-3 minutes, something like that. But equally in conversations with students, or when you support them throughout assessments and things like that, you can bring that in. Or sometimes you can feel that the energy is dropping in the classroom, and so the engagement is dropping. And if you allow this to come up and speak to it, to say, okay, I think all of us need a break. All of us need some air. All of us need some movement. We need to refocus and then come back. Then that can also help us to be more mindful of the way of how we feel and the way of how our students feel. And hopefully that can change then the interaction that we have with our students as well, because we are accommodating to their needs. We are sensing that as well. And I think that is really important. I think we don't do enough of that. How often do we sit in a classroom or stand in a classroom and we ask a question and there is no response? Well, in the first feeling that we have probably, but we might not admit to ourselves, is, nobody's answering. I feel rejected. I feel hurt, right? So what do you do with that? Do you carry on with that feeling? Well, the students you will reflect that energy. They will have that as well. So that can sometimes contribute to the engagement dropping. So the question is, how do you deal with that? Do you allow it and say, okay, I do feel hurt, I do feel rejected, but maybe they need more time. Maybe this is something that they don't know the answer about it now. Maybe I find a different way, a different channel for them to feed back to me later on, and I let it go because it hasn't anything to do with me as a person. So this is where the mindfulness comes in to the teaching, and where we become more aware of our own sensations and feelings and thoughts that come up, so that we can then reflect differently and hopefully work differently with our students. And equally for our students, we pick up on their cues, on their energy as well.
Well, thanks, Christine. We've had another question come into the Q&A. And so again, I'll read the bits of the question out. Thank you, Christine, for such an interesting presentation. Can you advise how a program might incorporate yoga mindfulness as a regular feature?
Oh, yes, I would love to do that. Yeah, I do definitely think that there is a space for that. Whether there is a module that you might call personal professional development, and you make it part of that, or maybe you want to bring in something called, in the business school, it might be yoga for managers. There are sessions out there, and what you do is you then focus the content, the conversations or the meditation on those aspects. So it could be around leadership, it could be around designing a particular marketing campaign and just getting them into the space, allowing them to be creative, for instance. So we discuss quite often the aspect of creativity, for instance, how we can bring that in. Now, if you do a short meditation in the beginning before you set them off into groups to be creative, what tools can you provide in that short meditation that can help them be more creative in the brainstorming session, for instance? So it becomes a part of the design feature, really. Yeah.
If I can just widen it out a little bit, is my kind of question following on from that is we know it's a bigger and bigger an issue that we have to deal with personally, that organizations will have to deal with as time goes on. So how do we get well-being into the curriculum? You know, where should it be? How do we get it in there? So it's you know, if we're thinking about it from a business school perspective, then it's going to be one of the biggest challenges that managers in the future are going to face is around the happiness and the well-being of their employees and the people that they manage and lead. So from our perspective within a business school framework, how do we get it and where do we get it into our curriculum, what and how we teach?
So I think part of this is through, you know, reflection. That might be one way to do that, but also help the students to define particular concepts. So what does happiness mean to you? What does satisfaction mean to you? What does success mean to you, right? Because in our understanding, there is just one way. And again, meditation and yoga can help to do that, to really think about it. When a lot of people, and I think this is a misconception actually, a lot of people think about yoga as you have to be super bendy and there needs to be one way of how you hold your pose and that's it. And it's actually not like that at all. I'm not bendy. It is more about how do you feel into the pose? How can you make it work for you and your own body? And if I can hold a certain pose for a certain time or whatever, then that's success enough. But that's different to what someone else has in mind about what success is. So I think this whole well-being, it's not just about being mentally happy. It's also about understanding what these concepts mean to me actually, and that I'm okay with that. And that just if there is one definition doesn't mean that that definition applies to me as well. And I think it's about bringing in these sort of more personal development themes throughout the curriculum and tying it in with the program. You mentioned already a lot of organizations offer yoga and offer mindfulness sessions on a regular basis. And I think that is the way forward, or coaching or something like that. So I think it's about a holistic approach that we need to take to think about how we can bring that in. However, there's this one little side note probably, and that is what you said earlier. There will always be skepticism. You know, there will always be people who say, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to turn into meditation. I haven't come here to sit for 10 minutes to meditate to then go into a brainstorming session. And I think it's about how do we navigate that, you know, because it's about communicating it. It's about making people aware of it. But not everybody has that openness for whatever reason. And I think that is also important to consider.
Brilliant. Thank you, Christine. I think we are soon to be running out of time, and so can I first of all offer a huge thank you to Professor Christine Rivers for her time today. Huge congratulations, not just from me, but I'm sure from everyone on your appointment. It's unbelievably well earned, and we're so glad that you've now joined the ranks of the professors in the University of the Business School. And it's been great to hear about your research and your practice, and also a little bit there, I think, about plans for the future. As I mentioned at the start of the session, this is, I think, the second of our series inaugurals, where we're getting on newly minted professors to come and talk about their research and their plans for the future. The next one that we have, which everyone will obviously be cordially invited to, is on the 4th of May, Wednesday the 4th of May, with another of our new business school professors, Professor Ying Zhu, who will be talking about, whose lecture is entitled "When the Grass is Greener on the Other Side, the Joint Effect of Occupational Mobility and Personality on Job Satisfaction During Job Change." And again, mobility, personality, is the grass greener? I think there's probably lots of things there along the same kind of theme that Christine's been talking to us about. We've got an inaugurals webpage where the full program of all the inaugurals, so please have a look at that. And I think the link for that is going to be in the chat somewhere. So once again, thanks, Christine.
Thank you.
Absolutely fascinating. It's always great to get insights into people's research, into people's practice. It tells us so much about what drives people and the passion that people have, and it was wonderful to hear. Thanks to everyone for coming along today. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I hope you got something out of it in exactly the same way that I did. And so it just leaves me now to bring the session to a close. Huge thanks, Christine. Huge thanks, everyone. And we look forward to seeing everyone at our next SURI inaugural session. Thanks, Christine. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.